prison of your patterns cannot be unlocked with the same keys that created the cage. Right now, as you sit there, your mind is doing something extraordinary. It's creating the very reality you experience while simultaneously convincing you that this reality is happening to you. This is the first great deception. The mind that built your limitations cannot see beyond them. The thoughts that constructed your cage cannot conceive of the open door. You believe you are thinking your thoughts, but what if your thoughts are thinking you? Most people live their entire lives as prisoners of their own mental patterns, never recognizing that the warden, the guard, and the prisoner are all the same consciousness looking through different masks. They wake each morning expecting different results while running the same mental programs that created yesterday's problems. They seek solutions in the same consciousness that generated the confusion. The ancient masters knew this truth. They understood that transformation cannot come from the level of thinking that created the problem. It must arise from a different quality of awareness altogether. Not thinking about thinking, but stepping outside the stream of thought entirely. Watch yourself right now. As these words reach you, notice what happens. Your mind immediately begins to compare, to judge, to agree or disagree. It cannot simply receive. It must process, categorize, make sense of everything according to what it already knows. This is how the mind maintains its prison, by filtering every new possibility through old patterns of understanding. The fish swimming in water cannot understand wetness. It has never experienced dryness. Similarly, the mind trapped in its own patterns cannot recognize the patterns themselves. It sees only the content of thoughts, never the space in which thoughts arise. It notices the waves but remains blind to the ocean. You have been hypnotized by your own consciousness, convinced that the voice in your head is who you are, believing that the endless stream of mental commentary is necessary for survival, living as though the narrator of your experience is somehow separate from the experience itself. But here lies the profound truth that changes everything. You are not the thinker of your thoughts. You are the awareness in which thoughts appear and disappear like clouds across an open sky. Most people cannot hear this truth because they are listening with the very mind that needs to be transcended. They use thinking to understand what lies beyond thinking. They employ the familiar to grasp the revolutionary. They remain seated in the same chair while wondering why the view never changes. The great illusion is this: you believe you control your thoughts, your emotions, your reactions. You think you are the author of your internal experience, but observe more carefully. Did you choose the thought that just arose? Did you select the emotion that suddenly appeared? Did you consciously decide to feel what you're feeling right now? The truth is both humbling and liberating. You are not in control of your mental processes, but you are not victim to them either. You are something far more magnificent. You are the conscious space in which all mental activity occurs. Think of a movie theater. The screen displays countless images, joy, sorrow, violence, beauty, yet the screen itself remains unchanged, untouched by any image that appears upon it. The screen is not damaged by fire scenes, not saddened by tragic stories, not elated by happy endings. It simply provides the space for all experiences to arise and pass away. Your true nature is like this screen. Pure awareness, unchanging consciousness, the eternal witness to the temporary dance of thoughts and emotions. But you have become so fascinated by the movie that you have forgotten you are the screen. This forgetting creates every problem you face. When you identify with the content of consciousness rather than consciousness itself, you become trapped in an endless cycle of seeking, struggling, defending, and reacting. You live at the mercy of whatever appears in your mental space, like a person who believes they are drowning because they're watching a flood scene in a movie. The mind that created this identification cannot solve it. The thinking process that generated the confusion cannot think its way out of confusion. This requires a completely different approach, not more thinking, but a stepping back from thinking altogether. Most people fear this stepping back. They worry that without constant mental activity, they will cease to exist. They have confused the noise in their head with their identity. They mistake the activity of mind for the essence of self, so they remain trapped in analysis paralysis, trying to think their way to freedom while using the very mechanism that maintains their bondage. But what happens when you stop trying to solve your life and start witnessing it instead? What occurs when you cease the endless effort to fix, change, and improve your experience and simply observe what is actually happening? Something remarkable begins to unfold. The problems that seemed so solid, so urgent, so definitively real begin to reveal their insubstantial nature. They were not problems in reality. They were problems in your relationship to reality. They existed not in the world, but in your resistance to what was already present. The master does not solve problems. The master sees through them. Where ordinary consciousness sees obstacles, expanded awareness recognizes illusions. Where reactive mind sees threats, responsive consciousness perceives opportunities for deeper understanding. This is why your current approach has not worked. You have been trying to renovate the prison instead of walking through the open door. You have been rearranging furniture in a house that exists only in your imagination. You have been fighting shadows while standing in sunlight. Right now, in this very moment, you have access to a completely different way of being. Not through accumulating more knowledge, not through developing better strategies, not through working harder on yourself, but through the simple recognition of what has always been present, but overlooked. The awareness reading these words is not troubled. The consciousness that comprehends meaning is not confused. The space in which understanding arises is perfectly clear and naturally peaceful. This awareness, this consciousness that comprehends meaning is not confused. But this very approach reinforces the illusion of separation, the idea that there is someone who needs to get somewhere else to become someone different. The paradox is profound. The harder you try to change your mind, the more firmly you establish the reality of the mind that needs changing. The more effort you make to transform yourself, the more solid you make the self that requires transformation. The more you struggle to become free, the more real you make the prison. This is why spiritual seeking often becomes another form of suffering. The seeker seeks enlightenment, but seeking itself maintains the illusion of separation from what is sought. The practitioner practices presence, but practice implies that presence is something to be attained, rather than recognized as what is already here. You cannot sink your way out of identification with sinking. You cannot use the mind to transcend the mind. You cannot employ the problem-solving mechanism to solve the illusion that there is a problem solver. What then is the way? The way is not a path but a recognition, not a journey but an arrival at where you have always been, not a becoming but a remembering of what you have never not been. In the silence between thoughts you are free. In the space between breaths you are whole. In the stillness beneath mental movement you are already everything you have been seeking to become. The mind that created your problem was never real in the first place. It was a collection of learned patterns, inherited beliefs, unconscious habits, and cultural conditioning that you mistook for your true identity. Like a person who believes they are the character in a dream, you have been living as though you are the personality constructed by memory and imagination. But dreams end. Patterns can be seen through. Identities can be recognized as costumes worn by something much more fundamental. And in this recognition, the problem and the problem solver are revealed to have been a single movement of consciousness, exploring its own infinite creativity. You are not broken. You were never broken. There is nothing to fix because there is nothing wrong with the space in which all experience unfolds. The awareness that knows problems is itself untouched by any problem. The consciousness that witnesses suffering is itself beyond all suffering. This understanding changes everything while changing nothing at all. Your external circumstances may remain exactly the same, but your relationship to those circumstances undergoes a complete revolution. You continue to live your life, but now you know that life is living you. You still have thoughts and emotions, but now you know that thoughts and emotions are happening within you rather than to you. The transformation is immediate because it requires no time. It is effortless because it demands no effort. It is simple because it involves no complexity. It is available because it has never been absent. Yet most people miss it completely. They look for transformation in the future, missing the freedom available right now. They search for peace in changing circumstances, overlooking the peace that exists prior to all circumstances. They seek happiness in external achievements, ignoring the happiness that is their essential nature. The mind that looks for solutions cannot find what was never lost. The consciousness that seeks freedom cannot recognize what was never bound. The awareness that wants to become cannot see what already is. This is the great cosmic joke. What you are looking for is what is looking. What you want to find is what is finding. What you hope to become is what is already being you in this very moment. But this recognition cannot be forced. It cannot be manufactured through techniques or strategies. It cannot be produced by effort or discipline. It can only be allowed, welcomed, received, like a gift that has always been offered but never before noticed. The question is not how to solve your problems. The question is who is aware of the problems. Not how to change your mind, but what knows the mind. Not how to transform yourself, but what is this self that believes it needs transformation. In this questioning, not seeking answers, but resting in the mystery, something begins to shift. The solid world of problems starts to reveal its fluid nature. The fixed identity begins to show its constructed character. The urgent need for change relaxes into simple presence with what is. And in this presence, without effort or intention, the mind that created the problem dissolves into the awareness that was never touched by any problem at all. So how do you step outside the mind that has been running your life? How do you access this awareness that exists beyond the stream of thought, The answer lies not in doing more, but in doing less. Not in adding practices to your life, but in recognizing what is already present when all the mental noise subsides. Watch what happens right now when you stop reading for 3 seconds and simply exist. Do it now. Stop. Be. What did you notice? In that brief, were you less alive? Were you less aware? Were you somehow diminished? Or did you find something that has been present all along, a quality of being that requires no maintenance, no effort, no thinking to sustain itself? This is your first taste of true power, not the power to control circumstances, but the power that exists prior to the need for control. Not the power to change reality, but the power that recognizes reality was never the problem. Most people fear stillness because they have been conditioned to believe that constant activity equals productivity, constant thinking equals intelligence, constant doing equals worth. They mistake the agitation of mind for aliveness. They confuse mental busyness with engagement. They equate the noise in their head with their identity. But true power moves from stillness. The mountain does not strain to be magnificent. The ocean does not effort to be vast. The sun does not work to shine. They express their nature effortlessly because they are rooted in something deeper than surface activity. When you discover this stillness within yourself, everything changes. Your actions become responses rather than reactions. Your words carry weight because they arise from silence. Your presence becomes a source of peace for others because you are no longer broadcasting the frequency of inner conflict. Can you feel it right now? Beneath all the mental chatter, beneath all the emotional fluctuations, beneath all the physical sensations, there is something that remains constant, unchanging, utterly still. This stillness is not empty. It is pregnant with infinite possibility. It is not dead. It is more alive than anything you have ever known. From this stillness, watch your breath. Not to change it, not to improve it, not to make it deeper or slower or more spiritual, simply to notice what is already happening. Your breath has been sustaining your life without your conscious intervention for every moment of your existence. It continues right now without any effort from the thinking mind. Your breath is your most intimate teacher. It shows you the rhythm of receiving and releasing that governs all of existence. In breath, out breath, expansion, contraction, taking in, letting go. This is the fundamental pulse of life itself, and you carry it within you always. But most people breathe as though they are trying to survive rather than live. Their breath is shallow, restricted, confined to the upper chest, like a bird trapped in a cage. They hold their breath when stressed, fight their breath when anxious, forget their breath when overwhelmed. They treat this sacred process as though it were merely a mechanical function. What if you breathed as though you belonged here? What if each inhalation was receiving life itself, and each exhalation was offering gratitude back to existence? What if your breath became conscious again? Try it now. Breathe as though you are drinking liquid light. Fill your entire torso, not just your lungs. Feel your ribs expanding like wings. Feel your belly rising like the sun. And as you exhale, release not just air, but everything you no longer need. Old tensions, stale thoughts, borrowed emotions that were never truly yours. This is not a technique to be practiced for a few minutes and then forgotten. This is a return to your natural way of being. Before you learned to be anxious, you breathed naturally. Before you developed the habit of worry, your breath was free. Before you constructed the prison of mental patterns, you existed in perfect harmony with the rhythm of life. Your breath connects you to the present moment, like an anchor connects a ship to the harbor. When your mind is lost in fantasies about the future, or trapped in stories about the past, your breath is always here, now available as a doorway back to reality. But breath is only the beginning. Through conscious breathing, you begin to recognize something even more fundamental, the awareness that notices the breath, the space in which breathing occurs, the consciousness that remains present, whether the breath is deep or shallow, fast or slow, smooth or ragged. This awareness is what you truly are. Not the breather, but that which knows breathing is happening. Not the experiencer of sensations, but that which is aware of all sensation. Not the thinker of thoughts, but that which observes thinking with perfect clarity. Most people have never met this awareness directly because they are always looking at what awareness is aware of, rather than recognizing awareness itself. They study the contents of consciousness while remaining unconscious of consciousness. They focus on the waves while ignoring the ocean. They become fascinated by the dance while forgetting the dancer. Right now, as you process these words, notice what is doing the processing. Something is reading, something is understanding, something is making meaning from these symbols. But what is this something? Can you locate it? Does it have a size, a shape, a color? Does it begin somewhere and end somewhere else?
The more closely you look for the one who is looking, the more mysterious it becomes. You cannot find awareness as an object, because awareness is that which perceives all objects. You cannot see consciousness as a thing, because consciousness is that which sees all things. You cannot know this witness as a concept, because this witness is that which knows all concepts. This is profoundly liberating. The you that you think you are, the personality, the story, the collection of memories and preferences and fears, this is not who you actually are. This is content appearing within what you are. Like clouds appearing in sky, thoughts and emotions and sensations appear within the vast space of your true nature. When you recognize yourself as this space, rather than as any particular content that appears within it, your entire relationship to experience transforms. You are no longer at the mercy of changing thoughts because you are the unchanging awareness in which thoughts
change. You are no longer threatened by difficult emotions because you are the permanent peace in which emotions arise and pass away. But this recognition must become lived reality, not just intellectual understanding. It must move from your head to your heart to your bones, and this happens through the cultivation of conscious response rather than unconscious reaction. Most people live their entire lives in reaction mode. Something happens and they automatically respond according to old programming. Someone speaks to them in a certain tone and they immediately become defensive. A situation unfolds that reminds them of past pain and they instantly contract into familiar patterns of protection or attack. This reactivity keeps them trapped in the same cycles, creating the same results, living the same limited version of themselves over and over again. They wonder why their life doesn't change while they continue to respond to new situations with old patterns. But between every stimulus and response there is a space. In this space lies your freedom. In this space exists your power to choose. In this space lives the possibility of transformation. Can you feel this space right now? Before you form your next thought, there is a moment of openness. Before you react to the next trigger, there is an instant of possibility. Before you fall into the next automatic pattern, there is a gap where consciousness can enter. The master lives in this gap, not thinking about it, not trying to find it, but resting in it naturally. Like a skilled archer who draws the bow but does not grasp the arrow. The master acts from emptiness rather than from mental activity. This does not mean becoming passive or indecisive. This means becoming so present, so alert, so completely here that your actions arise from wisdom rather than habit, from love rather than fear, from freedom rather than compulsion. When someone speaks harshly to you, instead of immediately defending or attacking, you touch the stillness within yourself. From that stillness, you respond not to the words that were spoken, but to the human being who is speaking, not from your wounded past, but from your open present. Not to prove something about yourself, but to serve what the moment actually requires. This is the way of the warrior, not the warrior who fights external enemies, but the warrior who has conquered the automaticity of their own mind. Not the warrior who seeks to dominate others, but the warrior who has achieved mastery over their own reactions. Such a warrior moves through life like water flowing around rocks. They encounter resistance, but are not stopped by it. They face obstacles, but are not defeated by them. They meet aggression, but are not infected by it. They respond to whatever arises with exactly what is needed, no more, no less. This kind of response is not calculated or strategic. It emerges spontaneously from a consciousness that is no longer defending anything, no longer trying to prove anything, no longer afraid of anything. It flows from a heart that has nothing to lose because it has recognized itself as everything. But how do you cultivate this consciousness? How do you train yourself to live from response rather than reaction? How do you develop the warrior's way of being? The training ground is every moment of your ordinary life. Every conversation is an opportunity to practice presence instead of performance. Every challenge is a chance to respond from center instead of reacting from history. Every trigger is an invitation to touch stillness instead of falling into story. When you feel yourself beginning to react, return to your breath, not as an escape from the situation, but as a reconnection to your source. Feel your feet on the ground. Feel the space around your body. Feel the vastness that you are, rather than the personality you have been playing. From this spaciousness, look at the situation again. What is actually happening? Separate from your interpretation of what is happening. What is being asked of you beyond what your ego thinks is being demanded? What would love do here if love were not afraid of being misunderstood? Sometimes love responds with firmness. Sometimes love responds with gentleness. Sometimes love responds with silence. Sometimes love responds with action. But love always responds from wholeness rather than from woundedness, from abundance rather than from scarcity, from trust rather than from fear. This is the mastery that no external achievement can provide. This is the success that no amount of money can purchase. This is the freedom that no political system can grant or take away. This is the power that belongs to you, not because of what you have accomplished, but because of what you are. Most people spend their lives trying to become someone special, never recognizing that they are already something miraculous. They work to develop extraordinary abilities while ignoring the extraordinary fact of their own awareness. They seek to achieve enlightenment while overlooking the light that is already shining within them. But you are not most people. If you were, you would not have stayed present through these words. If you were, you would not feel the resonance of truth in what is being shared. If you were, you would not sense the possibility that your life could be lived from a completely different foundation. You are here because some part of you remembers what you have forgotten. You are listening because some part of you recognizes what you have overlooked. You are present because some part of you knows that you are more than you have been pretending to be. This knowing is not a belief or a hope or a spiritual concept. This knowing is your direct experience when all the mental noise stops and you meet yourself in the silence of pure being. This knowing is what remains when all your stories about yourself fall away and you discover what was here before the stories began. In this knowing there are no problems to solve because there is no problem solver to be found. There are no wounds to heal because there is no wounded one to be healed. There are no limitations to overcome because there is no limited one to be improved. There is only this mirror pure awareness, unconditional love, infinite peace, expressing itself as the unique human experience you call your life. Not seeking anything, not lacking anything, not needing anything to be different in order to be complete. This completeness is not an achievement, it is your starting point. This wholeness is not a goal, it is your foundation. This freedom is not something to be attained. It is something to be remembered and lived from in each moment of your precious, temporary, absolutely perfect human existence. Now comes the question that separates the seeker from the finder, the dreamer from the awakened. How do you live this understanding? How do you bring this awareness into the mundane moments of your daily existence? How do you maintain this clarity when life demands your attention in 1,000 different directions? The answer is both simpler and more challenging than you might expect. You do not maintain this awareness, you return to it, again and again and again. Like a river finding its way back to the ocean, you learn to flow back to your source whenever you notice you have wandered into the valleys of unconscious living. Most people believe that spiritual transformation means achieving a permanent state of bliss, wisdom, and unshakable peace. They think that once you get it, you never lose it. This misconception creates enormous suffering because it sets up an impossible standard and makes every moment of humanness feel like failure. But mastery is not about perfection. Mastery is about recognition. The master is not someone who never gets triggered. The master is someone who recognizes being triggered quickly and returns to center immediately. The master is not someone who never experiences difficult emotions. The master is someone who remains aware while emotions flow through them. Think of a master musician. They do not avoid wrong notes by never playing. They avoid wrong notes by developing such intimate familiarity with their instrument that their fingers naturally find the right keys. And when they do hit a wrong note, they do not stop the entire performance. They incorporate it into the music and continue playing. Your consciousness is your instrument. Your life is your performance. Every moment is an opportunity to play from mastery rather than from anxiety, from love rather than from fear, from presence rather than from patterns. But how do you develop this familiarity with your own consciousness? How do you train yourself to recognize when you have slipped into unconscious patterns and return to aware presence? The training happens in the small moments. Not in meditation retreats or spiritual workshops, but in the space between your alarm going off and your feet hitting the floor. Before you check your phone, in the breath, before you speak, in the instant, before you react to your partner's tone of voice. These micro moments are where transformation lives. Not in grand gestures or dramatic realizations, but in the accumulation of tiny choices to remain present rather than slip into automaticity. When you wake in the morning, before you allow your mind to begin its familiar routine of planning, worrying, and reviewing, take 3 conscious breaths. Feel your body in the bed. Notice the quality of light in the room. Remember that you are not a person who has problems. You are awareness itself, temporarily experiencing the adventure of being human. This remembering sets the tone for everything that follows, not because it protects you from challenges, but because it roots you in something larger than any challenge you might face. As you move through your morning routine, practice what the ancient masters called meditation in action. Brush your teeth as though you have never brushed teeth before. Feel the brush against your gums. Taste the paste on your tongue. Notice the sensation of water in your mouth. Not because teeth brushing is sacred, but because attention itself is sacred. Every ordinary activity becomes an opportunity to practice presence. Washing dishes becomes a meditation on the element of water. Walking becomes a practice of feeling your connection to the earth. Eating becomes a communion with the forces that grew your food and brought it to your table. This is not about turning your life into a spiritual performance. This is about recognizing that your life is already spiritual. You have simply been too distracted to notice. But what about when life gets difficult? What about when you are faced with real challenges, genuine conflicts, actual losses? What about when presence feels impossible and awareness seems like a luxury you cannot afford? This is when your practice becomes most valuable, not as an escape from difficulty, but as a way of meeting difficulty from your deepest wisdom rather than your surface reactions. When someone cuts you off in traffic, instead of immediately launching into anger or frustration, feel your breath, not to suppress your reaction, but to give yourself space to choose your response. The anger may still arise, let it, but now you are not the anger, you are the space in which anger appears and passes away. When you receive news that disturbs you, instead of immediately spinning into worry or analysis, feel your feet on the ground, reconnect with your body, remember that you are not just a mind processing information, you are an embodied being capable of handling whatever reality presents. When you face a loss or disappointment, instead of immediately trying to fix or change or escape the experience, allow yourself to feel what you feel fully, not wallowing in it, not making stories about it, but being present with the raw experience of being human in a world where nothing lasts forever. This is not spiritual bypassing, this is spiritual maturity. You do not transcend your humanity, you bring consciousness to your humanity. You do not rise above your emotions, you remain present while emotions move through you like weather patterns across the sky of your awareness. The goal is not to become invulnerable. The goal is to become so familiar with your own essence that temporary disturbances no longer threaten your fundamental sense of well-being. Like a tree that bends in strong winds but remains rooted, you learn to be flexible in your responses while remaining anchored in your true nature. But this stability is not built through force or discipline alone. It grows through gentleness, through patience, through treating yourself with the same compassion you would offer a beloved friend who is learning something new and difficult. When you notice that you have slipped back into old patterns, and you will again and again, do not make this an occasion for self-judgment. Simply notice, smile at the familiar dance of human consciousness, and gently return your attention to what is present right now. This returning is the heart of the practice. Not the avoiding of distraction, but the returning from distraction. Not the prevention of unconsciousness, but the awakening from unconsciousness. Not the elimination of patterns, but the recognition that you are not the patterns. Each time you return, you strengthen the muscle of awareness. Each time you choose presence over pattern, you deepen the groove of conscious living. Each time you respond from center rather than react from history, you embody more fully what you have always been. And slowly, gradually, naturally, your default setting begins to shift. Where once you automatically fell into worry, you now automatically return to breath. Where once you instinctively defended against discomfort, you now naturally open to what is present. Where once you habitually sought control, you now spontaneously rest in trust. This shift is not a new achievement. It is a returning to your original nature. Before you learned to be anxious, you were naturally peaceful. Before you developed the habit of struggle, you existed in effortless flow. Before you constructed the prison of separation, you lived in the freedom of connection. You are not becoming something new. You are remembering something ancient. You are not developing extraordinary abilities. You are recognizing the extraordinary nature of ordinary awareness. You are not transcending your human experience. You are finally showing up fully for your human experience. And as you show up more fully, something magical begins to happen. Your presence starts to affect others without you trying to influence them. Your peace becomes contagious without you trying to share it. Your freedom inspires freedom in others without you saying a word about transformation. This is the ultimate service, not trying to fix or change or awaken others, but being so genuinely yourself that others are reminded of their own genuine nature. Not preaching about consciousness, but living consciously. Not talking about love, but being loving. Not teaching about presence, but being present. The world does not need more information about awakening. The world needs more examples of awakened living. Not perfect examples, but authentic ones. Not superhuman examples, but genuinely human ones. Not examples of people who have transcended all difficulties, but examples of people who meet difficulties with consciousness. You can be such an example, not through striving or performing or trying to become something special, but through the simple commitment to remain awake to your own experience, through the willingness to choose response over reaction, presence over pattern, love over fear, moment after moment after moment. This is the revolution that changes the world, not through force or argument or persuasion, but through the quiet power of conscious living. Not through grand gestures, but through ordinary moments infused with extraordinary awareness. Every time you, before reacting, you contribute to the healing of human unconsciousness. Every time you respond from love instead of fear,
you add to the sum total of love in the world. Every time you remain present in difficulty, you demonstrate that peace is possible even in challenging circumstances. This is your gift to existence. Not what you accomplish or achieve or accumulate, but what you embody. Not how successful you become in the eyes of others, but how authentic you become in the truth of your own being. And here is the profound mystery. The more authentically you live, the more naturally everything else falls into place. Not because you are trying to make things happen, but because you are no longer interfering with what wants to happen. Not because you are controlling outcomes, but because you are aligned with the intelligence that creates all outcomes. Your relationships deepen because you are relating from truth rather than from masks. Your work becomes more fulfilling because you are creating from inspiration rather than from obligation. Your challenges become opportunities because you are meeting them from wisdom rather than from reactivity. Life stops being something that happens to you and becomes something that happens through you. You stop being a victim of circumstances and become a conscious participant in the unfolding of existence. You stop seeking happiness in external conditions and recognize happiness as your natural state when nothing is disturbed. This is the completion of the great work. Not the work of becoming someone different, but the work of recognizing who you have always been. Not the work of solving all your problems, but the work of seeing through the illusion that you are a collection of problems needing solutions.
The mind that created your problems was never real. It was a temporary constellation of thoughts, beliefs, and habits that you mistook for your identity, like someone who dreams they are a prisoner and then wakes up in their own bed. You have been dreaming you are limited and are now awakening to your limitless nature. But this awakening is not a one-time event. It is a continuous recognition, a moment-by-moment choice, a lifetime practice of remembering what you are beneath what you think you are. Right now, in this very moment, you have access to everything you have ever sought. Not tomorrow, when you have practiced more, not next year when you have grown wiser, not in some future state of perfection. Right now, here, in the simple awareness that is reading these words, this awareness is not troubled by your problems. This consciousness is not limited by your history. This presence is not threatened by your future. This is what you are. This is what you have always been. This is what you will always be, regardless of what appears to happen in the movie of your life. The prison door was always open, you were always free, you simply forgot to look beyond the walls you had constructed in your imagination. Now you know, now you remember. Now you have no excuse for living as though you are anything less than the infinite consciousness itself, temporarily expressing as the beautiful, temporary, absolutely perfect human being you appear to be. The mind that created your problem cannot solve it because the mind that created your problem was never real. But the awareness that recognizes this unreality, this awareness is real, this awareness is enough, this awareness is everything. Welcome home.